Good morning, morning. You see those kinds of noises. You laugh at me. You laugh at me, but those are the noises that wake you up and make you feel all right and make you warm. You promise you.
Louise.
Yes,
Louise. Sawubona
yes.
baba.
Hello, Pumelele. How are you?
I missed you so much last week.
Well, I missed
While
you
you
too,
were
but
out in the sunny side of the world.
I heard that you and Bakabantu had a very fun time. But
He is
you,
wonderful. I love him.
you've done your share of traveling too, because you were away the week before, right?
Yeah. Also in the sunny part of the world, up
I know
north.
between us, people are going to start thinking we're rich or something because we can travel.
Qua. Listen, Gareth. I went to the US and there are two things happening there. Their inflation is insane. Like we hear
Really?
about it here. It is insane. The amount of money that things cost. I don't know how people are living over there. And then add to that the fact that the rand completely conked out.
Oh my
Literally,
God.
literally as I was planning our trip, right? So as we were planning the trip out there, the rand was in free fall against the US dollar. I was watching it on a daily basis. When we were there, it was 1946 about, which means
Yeah.
if you buy a can of Coke.
My God.
Yeah, but I don't do those things. When I travel, I have a budget. I
Yeah.
convert it into whatever the currency is on the other side, and then that's
Right.
it. I'm not converting anything in my head. I'm not like buying gum and going, "Oh my God, it costs a
Yeah.
dollar 50."
Well, I
That
mean,
means
you'll drive yourself crazy because if you're doing the conversions the whole time, you're going to start thinking, and you get confused. I mean, it's impossible to keep track, and then you get back home and you're all paranoid about having spent too much. You
yeah,
know?
no. So
No,
I
not
don't
good.
do those things. And the second thing I don't do when I'm over there is I don't worry about how much of all of the stuff would be back home, how much, like, I don't compare. I try not to compare. Obviously on a grand scale you compare,
Yeah.
but I try not to compare. Thing that drives me insane, which I can't believe the rest of the world doesn't do, is the fact that all the prices, all our prices have the VAT integrated. So the price
Yes.
that you see, the price that you see at the thing is the price that you're
Yeah.
going to pay.
Right.
Mm.
America, they
That,
don't
like,
do that.
no, that tax thing, and also because we were in Washington, which is next, it's a very small district, and it's next to Maryland, and on the other side, it's next to Virginia, and
Mhm.
the tax regimes are different per state.
Oh,
So, when you are in Virginia, the tax is slightly less than when you are in DC.
I'll tell you something. This whole thing of having to pay like so many different kinds of taxes, and there was a clip going around of some guy in the I think he was in the European Parliament. He's an English guy, and he's busy explaining to people in Belgium why English people are not prepared to pay any more taxes. And like they pay state and local taxes, they pay national taxes, they pay European taxes, they pay income tax, they pay capital gains tax, they pay inheritance tax. By the time you work out how much tax you paid, this guy says, you get to keep like 20% of everything you work for. Now, if you told me I'd have to work for a week, but I only got to keep the money that I made on Monday, which is effectively what that is,
Mm.
I'd say, you know what, I'm not going to work because I'm working for other people for 4 days out of 5, and therefore not worth it. And by the way, those other people are not your children or your wife or your husband or your family. Those other people are people you will never meet, and money that you probably won't even reach other people. It'll go into the crooked politicians' pockets, you know? So I hear about these taxes, it drives me absolutely crazy.
Bona.
Makes me mad.
Bona. It was just it was,
Oh,
but of course, all travel always gives you a perspective on home. So
mhm.
it was nice to eventually come home. But
Yeah.
because it's like on the other side and we don't have SAA, there are no direct flights. I was
Mhm.
traveling forever,
Oh my god.
forever. I
But
felt like it was the worst. It was the
uh,
worst thing ever. And you know, because I can't
are
afford
we
to
talking like
travel
a 20-hour thing?
more from
Oh my
actually from when I left my house
uh
to when I arrived uh, at the hotel. It
Yeah.
was like, I don't know, like 30 hours or something
Oh,
ridiculous like that,
yeah,
with
you see that's not fun.
stopovers,
People
changing
people
planes, changing gates.
I hear people saying, "Oh, no, I love travel. I wanna spend my whole life traveling." And I'm like, "Are you insane?" There's a difference between holiday traveling and work traveling, first of all. So I get that. Second of all,
Yeah.
the actual in-transit time is never pleasant. And don't tell me, "Oh, well, if you've got enough money and you can fly business class or whatever." Even then, it can
Listen,
be
although I think if you're flying business, it's probably a different. I've never flown business, so I just in my mind it looks like it's probably a different experience.
mm, it's still time. And, you know, the one resource that you cannot make more of is time. So
Mm.
just because those people at the front of the plane, and I have been in business a couple of times, and they're sitting in slightly more comfortable seats and they get better food, doesn't mean that the time is any less for them.
Mm.
The amount of time as you've got in the back of the plane.
Yeah, but
Um,
the comfort,
yeah,
like,
but I mean that's the same as you know, someone who has all the worries in the world, but they live in a very nice house. Would you rather have no worries? I had this conversation with a friend of mine on holiday. I said, "How do you know?" We've often asked the question, "How do you know if you're rich?" And his answer was the most simple, straightforward answer I've ever heard, and I kind of like it. He said, "You are rich if you have 1 rand more than your expenses at the end of every month. That's it. Don't don't try to make more of it." You, of course, you know, if your bank balance is at 9 figures or whatever, which is the case for what the tiniest percentage of people on planet Earth. But
mm,
those people may have tremendous responsibilities, financial worries, uh, companies that they're responsible for, employees they're responsible for, issues in their personal life. You don't know. But in financial terms, if you have 1 rand more than your expenses every month, you are rich. Full stop. And I think that's a good definition.
it's a good definition.
So let me tell you what I did yesterday because I hate things like this. This is my one of the few things that I can actually say I have proper fear and loathing for, and
My goodness.
it's going to the dentist. I had
Oh
to go
yes,
and
I
I
know
had to have
this.
my teeth cleaned. Okay, now this is a thing. What, every 6 months or whatever you're meant to go, and I'm pretty
Mhm.
good about sticking to it because the last thing you want in this world is problems with your teeth. I mean, I've seen very,
Or
very
having
happy.
or your teeth breaking and falling out.
Oh my god, I have nightmares about that sometimes at night. Uh, oh yeah, I do.
Really?
I've had nightmares about 2 or 3 times in my life, but Jesus, terrifying. You know,
They include your teeth falling out, and then you're
yes,
left with like one tooth, like just
yes.
one
I dream that
hanging
my
here.
teeth actually fall out while I've got important stuff to do, and, you know, it's like the most embarrassing thing ever. Anyway, I went to this doctor. She's very good. She's very professional. Because, you know, my dentist that I used to go for years, she died during COVID, so I had to find a new
I
dentist.
didn't know this, really?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh
She was
dear.
terrific. Anyway,
How traumatizing.
yeah,
New doctor, new doctor for the thing you loathe and fear.
so I was very nervous about her. Went for the first time last year to her. No, in fact, it was the second time already last year. So this year was the third time. And I had to go 6 months later, which was obviously now. And it was quick and easy. I mean, I just, I clench my fists and I start sweating, and it's so bloody horrifying to me. And then they pull out that machine that goes, and it's very high pitched noise, and then they always hit like some very tender part of your gums, or oh my god, it's horrible. And then you get that oh, and then that sucking thing too, which is so gross. Anyway, she made it as she made it as easy as possible. And I said to her, the teeth are they all? She does X-rays beforehand, and afterwards she checks all the teeth, and so thank God none of them are falling out anytime soon. But it's just the most traumatic thing. Ugh, it's horrible.
I, I have actually not felt that way about the
Ugh,
dentist since I was small.
for me,
It's just-
I was thinking about this appointment 3 months ago. How much I hate it. Ah, I'm,
oh, shame, Nana.
That's horrible. Anyway, I made it through. I'm very proud of myself. I think I'm I think I'm some kind of survivor. I deserve like the Legion d'honneur or something for just making it through my dentist appointment.
Well done. Well, give us a big smile away from the mic so we can see your pearlies. Look at that.
Like
Look
that.
at it.
And
Lovely.
they are looking good. I'm happy about that.
You
Tell
just
you
have
what,
to
I've
do it again in December.
I've been very lucky. I've had some very good dentists in my life. And listen, uh, if you find a good one, you stick to them, because aren't they supposed to be the profession with the highest suicide rate?
Really?
Mm. People don't,
Why?
because people don't like their dentists, and it eventually works on the dentist. No one, no one's like, you know what? I'm having a great day. I think I'll call my dentist. Ever. Anyway, so long leave the teeth, long leave.
Long shall they stay in place.
Mm. We've got the Burning Platform later on, which is going to be loads of interesting stuff as usual. And we're going to be joined by Dumo Denga, who we haven't had on for a little while. We talk about NHI, which is obviously going ahead, even though it's the most ham-fisted collection of bullshit ideas I've ever seen this government propose. And we had Jonathan Witt come on a while ago and explain just why it is one of the worst pieces of legislation since the fall of apartheid. We're looking at solving load shedding, which he has some ideas about too. And we'll get to all of the politics later on. So if you're keen for some argument and some hardcore current affairs discussions, that's on the way a little bit later. But before we get to any of that, this is interesting. The New York Times is reporting this morning that Madonna has been hospitalized while on her tour, her celebration tour. She's apparently got some
Is she
serious.
on the tour?
Yeah, she's got some serious bacterial infection, and she's had to stay in ICU. She's been in since Saturday, and that's all we've got. Her manager, Guy Osiri, said that she's in hospital, and that's in New York. I think it's in New York. I'm not sure exactly where, but she's postponed her tour for the moment. So if you wanted to know, it's not because she's gone in for more plastic surgery, because she's already on tour. That's all we know, right? So
Mm.
at this time, we will need to pause all commitments, which includes the tour. He said we will share more details with you as soon as we have them, including a new start date for the tour, as well as rescheduled shows.
You see, also because she ain't young, hey, at 64.
No, no, she's
Lots of
she's
things,
gotta,
lot of
gotta watch
things
out.
rattle about there at that age.
Damn right. I hope it wasn't because of a horse, says Slippery Pickle.
Okay.
People are horrible. So producer Ryan says his dentist is brilliant. His biggest fear is that he retires soon. Yeah. When you had a doctor or a dentist or somebody, even I know women who are attached to their hairdressers.
I
right?
am. I have
There we
been
go.
going to the same hairdresser since I was in matric.
There we go. See, now if he or she retires, that's going to be a big problem for you.
Mm.
And of course, you like Madonna's never going to retire. She's going to keep touring until she's a carcass. But if your doctor keeps working past a certain age, they get a bit shaky. They're not
Ah,
necessarily as screwed up. You got to
oh,
watch out.
you
Yes.
cannot have shaky hands with the dentist. My God.
Oh, Jesus, no. Oh my God. Can you imagine if the drill goes all over the So no, you gotta watch that stuff.
One of my brother's doctors, a specialist, I just don't remember which one, but anyway, he was very, very old. He retired.
Very,
Uh,
very
he was, I think he retired. Like my brother was one of the last people that he saw when he retired, and then handed over all his files to another doctor. But he didn't
yeah.
last long after that.
Shame.
I
I tell
know,
you what,
right?
when you stop working, you go backwards. There's just
I
no
think
way
so.
around that. If you are a person who needs to be productive, I had such a productive day yesterday. For me, I finished the show, and by 9 o'clock, I had done more than I'd probably done in the week before I left for holiday.
Yay.
Fired off like 12 emails with important stuff that I'd been waiting to do. I'd done some paperwork that I hadn't done. I'd made lists of things that I'd already started crossing off. I had phoned 2 or 3 people that I'd been meaning to phone. I put together a one-page document that I'd been promising somebody for a while. Oh, so good.
Gareth, in an hour, that is impossible. That's
In an
too.
hour, I swear to God,
Did you
I was
check
like,
those emails?
for me, I was like a machine. I swear I was an absolute machine yesterday. And I
Mm.
went I went for my dentist appointment. I had a meeting. I did some shopping that I had to do because I hadn't bought any shit for the house. I sorted out some other stuff too that had been in the inbox for a long time. I cleared out. I sorted out my finances. I typed up all my slips.
No.
No,
Oh my
I
goodness.
was a machine. I was unstoppable yesterday. And you know what? I got it all done because I didn't have any interruptions. I even went to gym in the afternoon. I was so busy.
Aibo.
Yeah.
That is, yeah,
Yes.
that's actually above and beyond, Gareth. You may take the rest of this week off.
Thank you. I think I might. I might have. So apparently, and maybe Ryan can help us with this because when we were talking about Prime and what a bullshit hype thing it was, Checkers apparently cannot sell the stuff anymore. Apparently, Ryan Paul or whatever his name is, Paul Ryan. What I don't know what the guy's name is anyway. I know it's got a Ryan in it because he's the producer of the
Does
show.
it? Uh-huh.
I don't know.
No,
Anyway,
it doesn't.
I don't know what his name is. This
Okay, what about Prime?
YouTuber who's he's one of the shareholders in Prime. He was at
Yes.
some event and they started throwing Prime at him. So it's gone from being this thing that people loved. Logan Paul, thank you very much. KSI, they're the two owners. People were throwing Prime at him.
Where?
I saw this on the internet yesterday. His bodyguards had to protect him and hold like a jacket over him. They were throwing the liquid and the bottles at him at some event.
No
So that's
ways.
turned,
No
yeah,
ways.
that's turned from being something that people love to something that people clearly fucking hate. I mean, that's absolutely incredible, right? Talk about
Sure.
it. Talk about a 180-degree turn.
That what?
Yeah, here we go. Bob Damini knows what I'm talking about.
It
Says
was
the
the Prime launch in Copenhagen.
yeah, they threw this shit at him. They were like, "Get out! We don't want to buy your nonsense." I think the kids say it's too expensive and it tastes cuck. I think people are becoming more discerning than ever, and it's going to be very difficult for people to just trend and to create trends and to hype things up for no good reason. And that's good because then we might actually get some quality products again.
Look, I think if it's about the cost of it, it is also because all over the world. I know we started by talking about the inflation in the US, but all over the
Mm,
world, money just doesn't go as far as it used to go all
that's
over
it.
the world. So
Absolutely.
people people are definitely gonna I if the kids are starting to think things are expensive, my God,
Yeah,
this world is
they
coming
are.
to a it's coming to a grinding halt, I'll tell you. Because kids don't normally have that kind of sense of money because they don't have to work for it.
Right. Well, that's changing. I think it's changing before our very eyes. And if it's happening at the level that you don't even really have parents or adults involved, where the kids are attacking their own supposed influences and celebrities and throwing their product in their faces, then you know, like this is
Mm.
definitely something. This is noteworthy. It's not just some crazy event. This is not like just some stupid thing that you should. It's actually a remarkable event. This it could be a turning point for so much other stuff that's similar.
Phew.
Anyway, so I do want to talk about a few things this morning, and I know you do too. When you were in America, you said that you saw the public library in the old city of New York, and
In
they found a
No,
new
in
use.
Washington.
Washington,
In
sorry, not
Washington. So the Washington Public Library, which
no.
and I actually got pictures of it for you because they downstairs they've got a little they've got a little museum about the
Hmm.
library and about kind of when it was because it was a public competition for the design of the library and it's
Yeah.
Carnegie, yeah, Dale Carnegie was the paid for it because he was so poor and he always and the library was the place where
Mhm.
he learned so many things from, right? And it is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful building and it's
Yeah.
now an Apple Center.
Oh,
So
really?
upstairs on the two wings, it's
Is this
an
it?
Apple. No, no, no. This at the New York Public Library. Marc Jacobs had
Oh.
his fashion show for NY Fashion Week. Was
Hmm.
there at the New York Public Library again? Because libraries have become white elephants, right? People don't go to libraries as much as they used to because the internet. People used to go to libraries for research, borrowing books, but all of those things are now available on your fingertips, in your phone, on your computer at home. You never have to go to the library. And I just love that people are finding new ways of using some really awesome spaces.
Well,
Really, really awesome spaces.
we stumbled upon something similar on Tuesday when Ryan brought up that his uncle has a tennis court on his property, and if you think about how many northern suburbs homes in Johannesburg, in fact, most of the cities in South
Mm,
Africa have inexpensive residential suburbs. They all have tennis courts, and they're using those for different things now. I mean, most of them are overgrown and badly maintained, but
mm.
public libraries is another good example. I just hope that they don't throw out and destroy all the books. Those have got to be stored somewhere because somewhere in the future they're
Oh
going to
yeah,
be valuable. You know.
those do get stored so upstairs at that library in Washington, so in the middle side they've got a space where they train people, where they teach people. There was an iPhoneography workshop when I walked in there, and upstairs there was one of the other spaces is a rotating exhibitions and they had a photography exhibition upstairs. All of those things are just, so for me, all of those things are just such fantastic ways to bring people back into the space and appreciate it and use it again differently and breathe new life into it. There's still a research space in that library that's
I love
linked to
that.
one of the universities.
I
But
love
it's
that,
just,
especially if you can take an old and beautiful building that was really, because they don't build like that anymore. Those buildings they made at the end of the 1800s, beginning in the 1900s, are some of the most beautiful buildings that were ever put up in the world. And the fact that everything since like the 1950s is just fucking hideous, all of it.
it's a
If I
block.
could,
It's
if
a
I
block
could,
of concrete.
I'll tell, especially from the 70s. But if I could, I would just steamroll every building built since the 1970s. They're just all revolting, and there's not one of them that I think is valuable. People talk about Bauhaus and horrible things like the Pompidou Center and these glass skyscrapers. Everything's metal, and it's just revolting. Those stone buildings, those beautifully,
Yeah.
classically proportioned buildings they used to build. To waste those now because the function of them has changed would be ridiculous. I see them even refurbishing buildings in the CBD of Johannesburg to, make them apartments or to turn them into
Yeah.
offices or whatever else. I think that's so valuable because
Yeah.
we don't make buildings like that anymore. And we couldn't because, of course, budgets, architects have been forced to be more functional than
And
they
even
are
just
aesthetic.
the skill of building in a particular
Can't do
way.
it. We don't have
You know,
stonemasons.
oh, it's just, but that building, I did take pictures specifically for you. Also, the downstairs they've got the drawings, the drawings of the sketches of all of the various components of the building. It's
Oh,
just
love that. So
unbelievably beautiful.
so just to quickly go back to where we were, Ryan managed to find the video of Logan Paul and the Copenhagen Prime launch. Take a look at this, and you'll see what we mean. If you're on YouTube, and if you are on YouTube, like and subscribe so that we can get the benefit of your viewing as you can get the benefit of our show. Here it is. Take a look at this. Sounds like chaos. But those are
So,
not happy customers. Those are not people who are just going to buy your shit because you're famous anymore. You know.
well, thank goodness for that.
All right. Well, here are a couple of comments that people have come up with in respect to what we've just talked about. Of course, we have masons. I know the locations are 3 lodges. No, we're not talking about Freemasons, stonemasons. I follow this guy on Instagram. There's a guy on Instagram who actually is a proper old school stonemason, but he's a guy in his like 30s, and
Oh wow.
it's incredible. Yeah, it's incredible to see how he dresses stone. He has a little chisel and an old school hammer, and he helps refurbish cathedrals and things like that because you've got to do that the old way. So there are still a few people who can do it, but
Mm.
very rare skill, rare talent. So Hardy Dave says, please talk about the KZN tornado, and I actually got pictures of this. Maybe I could put these up and we can share them on the show this morning.
So
From a
I
friend
saw
of mine.
some videos, people who had posted some videos, a guy in a taxi. It was harrowing. A guy in a taxi just completely freaked out. Because can you imagine like being in a
Oh my god!
taxi in the middle of all of that?
Oh yeah.
Um, some of I saw some videos of people whose houses, the roofs had been ripped off, some
Mhm.
in the township. I don't know
Yes.
what's going on. I don't know what's going on in KZN and in their weather at the moment, but it is awful. And just
It's really bad.
to hear the voices of the people and the terror in their voices and the fear, and it's yeah.
So here it is. Let me show you. This is the video that somebody sent me, a friend of mine who lives in KZN. Apparently, this is near Phoenix. And that's a proper, like, look at that. There's an actual tornado stroke hurricane type thing going on in
Mm,
KZN. It's insane weather. We're not used to this. Have you ever seen this before?
no,
Me neither. Here's
that
another one.
is insane.
Ryan has another video. Show us. Look at this.
So we currently outside Astron fuel station here by the Westridge Tennis Stadium, and it's so waterlogged. Even the taxis are floating away. So yeah, this is the no-go zone.
Mm.
Jesus, those taxis are actually floating away. Yo, tell you
Corinne
what,
in the
not
comments
good.
says she saw the sky change color. So, Corinne, are you near there? You know? Sheesh.
Seems like
Very
it. Karine
scary
says
stuff.
it was very hectic in Phoenix. Well, listen, I mean, I think this is terrible, terrible stuff, and I am, my heart goes out to those people. It's bad enough when it's cold, but when it's cold and it's windy, it's that much worse. And when it's cold, windy, and rainy, it's that much worse. And if you're actually in a storm of that magnitude that can do destructive things, I just I don't know what to think. I don't know what to say. It's awful. Um, so apparently people are also very, very excited about this Barbie movie, Pumi. I don't know very much about it, but I see that they are busy doing marketing and merchandising around it like you cannot believe. So maybe you can
Listen,
tell us because you
Gareth.
you know these things. I don't know what's going on here.
Well, I've been watching it because of my interest in marketing and advertising. I have been
Right.
watching and it's ramped up. The movie comes out in July, I think on the 21st. And it's it's been in development for a long time, and it's taken we've never had a Barbie movie, right? There's been like smaller like Barbie things on
Some would,
TV,
some would
made for
say,
TV
some would say,
kind of stuff.
thank God. Some people would say that that's a great thing that we don't have a Barbie
Well,
movie.
well, if this Barbie movie does what I think it's going to do at the box office, it's going to be a case study for the ages. First of all, I think they had like a blank check for the marketing because the kind of partnerships, because Barbie's universe is big, right? So a Barbie world is big. It's clothes, it's shoes, it's makeup, it's a
Yeah.
house, it's all of those things give you all of these many places where you can have product placement, where you can have partnerships, where you can just expand on the movie and the merchandising of the movie. I don't know if you know this, but like Star Wars was one of the first films that had a huge merchandising wing to it. One that
Sure.
actually almost, made more money than the film itself at the time when it came out. And I think this Barbie movie is going to be the next one. I mean, Aldo just launched a shoe range that's in a box like a Barbie box. So when you buy the shoes,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
not just a normal shoe box. They Forever 21 have got a kind of 90s themed line with Barbie stuff. OPI, the nail polishers have like Barbie nail polishers coming out. There's ice cream, like frozen yogurt stuff at a Wakaberry type place. And a couple of days ago, which is the one thing that a lot of people have been talking about, they actually in Malibu, because Malibu Barbie was one of their very, very big sellers, they actually built a mansion, a pink, huge, life size Barbie Malibu mansion. Xbox.
Real one.
Just an Xbox that's like Barbie themed console. Like
That's an
what?
that is an Xbox?
That, my dear, is an Xbox.
Oh
And
my
then
God,
the
what
thing around it is obviously the holder, the casing for it. These are all the actresses that are playing Barbie in the film. Because of
gee.
course, there's lots of different types of Barbie, right?
So do
There's
you reckon that they've just had like a
hotel.
blank check?
This is a hotel. This is a Barbie themed hotel that that all the interviews were in, and this is the house, life size. You can see it. There's like a drone footage of it, and
That
there's
is
a on
hideous.
YouTube you can actually do a walkthrough with one of the main actresses.
It's hideous. That is the ugliest thing. Okay, so obviously, you know what this makes me think of? You know all these kids who are walking around with like NASA tops? They've all
Yeah,
got NASA written on things. And obviously you mentioned Star Wars, which is a huge thing for merchandising. So you reckon Barbie's going to be the same thing?
yeah. This I think it's gonna be bigger. I
Gee,
think this is going to be bigger. It's going to be a case study. It's going to be like the Cola Wars kind of Harvard level case study, marketing case study,
wow.
because
Okay.
the partnerships have been insane. I mean, they've done all the normal stuff, right? So there's
Mm.
online, they're all the trailers, they've got some out of home stuff, so big pink billboards and all of that kind of stuff. But because Barbie is an icon, baby. Barbie is an icon. So this is gonna be
Well,
very
look,
fascinating to watch. I mean, and I feel like n- beyond a certain age, we're not, girls particularly, we're not immune to it, right? Because I wanted a Barbie. I wanted a Barbie all those many years ago. And so now I see the Barbie mules at Aldo and I'm like, those would be nice. So I don't think anyone is going to be immune to it. And that's why I think it's going to be
Well, if you
a
want something to
big seller.
catch on, like if you want peer pressure, if you want to have like that youthful excitement around things, the best target market for you is young girls. There's something about them. They just the pressure on, like, if one of the cool girls likes something, every other girl in the school likes it.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. And I think this is, it'll probably also kind of like Lego turned a corner when they started doing all these partnerships with big brand movie brands, right? I think this is also going to change. Like, it'll make Barbie a new icon for a whole new generation of people.
So Carl says, thank God Amy Schumer turned this role down. Margot Robbie is so hot. Amy Schumer would have ruined this. I couldn't agree more. Even though I'm not, there's no way, you're not going to get me to go to the Barbie movie. It's never going to happen, right? I'm
I
not the target market.
listen, I was just interested at it. I was interested about it on the periphery. But now,
Mm.
as it's getting closer and closer, and all of this stuff, all of this hype is coming out, all of the stuff that they're doing, there's even in LA, there is actually a Barbie experience where you can like buy a ticket and go into an entire Barbie experience, all of these things, be in the Barbie universe, as it were.
Hmm. Yeah, okay, good. I don't know what to say to this because I've obviously never really paid attention to Barbie. I never we used to torture and torment my sister with her Barbies. We would go and we would like pull their head off and put tomato sauce where the head would have been, and you know, I
Mm,
didn't.
shame, man.
Yeah,
Jesus.
sorry,
What a
little brother.
menace. What
Yeah,
a menace.
I know. Stebu says, girly movies don't do that well at the box office. If they feature a superhero in that movie, then all the nerds will go and watch it and we'll wait for the downloadable version and criticize it for clout.
I don't know. I think this is gonna. I think this movie is gonna do something different. I mean, most of these kind of rom-coms or what he calls girly movies
Yeah.
are a different audience. The difference with Marvel or those kind of superhero things, why they are super box office hits, is because they've got this cult following that stretches across different generations, which is what Barbie has, right? So Barbie has
Mhm.
me, and Barbie
Okay.
has a young
Yeah.
girl today, and Barbie has, I mean, it's been around since 1959. So there are
Mm.
millions and millions and millions of women and girls who love Barbie.
Absolutely. It's an institution, and there is no doubt that this is one of the most powerful marketing vehicles that there are. Young girls and their dolls have been a thing since time immemorial. But this doll, and I think it's Mattel, right? Isn't Mattel the
Yeah,
company?
Mattel. It is.
Mattel.
Mattel is the company that owns Barbie.
This thing just prints money for them. Gray says his mother has her original Barbie from 1959. Another
Yay.
brand. You know, that must be worth quite a lot of money now, right? If it's in good condition.
If it was still in its box, I think it would be worth quite a mint.
Yeah, I always
And
used to look
all
for
the
Barbie's box.
accessories. So the thing
I
about
could never find Barbie's box. It was irritating.
the thing, but this is the thing also about Barbie that's allowed all of this merchandising to be available, right? Is the whole thing about Barbie is it's Barbie the doll and all her stuff, right? So Barbie and her car, Barbie and her, Barbie and her house and her clothes and her shoes and her makeup and her combs and her, all of that stuff is the stuff. I mean, I also saw something that, those scented candles. There's a brand in
Yes.
the States called Home something. Homesick.
Mhm.
Homesick, and they have created a candle which is like Malibu Barbie house, like whatever the smell is. Like, man,
Plastic.
this
Smells like burning
doll's
plastic.
universe. This doll's universe. And then, do you remember that awful song? I'm a Barbie girl
Oh, it's the
in a
worst.
Barbie world.
Are they gonna
I
use
think
that?
it's
Are they
gonna.
gonna use that song?
I don't know if they've used it in
Oh.
the movie. I don't know if they've used it in the movie, but I think it's definitely gonna make a comeback.
Bob Dlamini says, "How long till Black Barbie?" We've had Black Barbies for
There are
years, though.
black Barbies, and in fact,
Lots
in this Barbie, Issa Rae plays one of the Barbie. Because one of the premise of the film is that Barbie leaves the Barbie universe. She has an
Mhm.
existential crisis and leaves the Barbie universe and goes into the real world.
Oh,
But in the beginning of it, when she's in the Barbie, everybody is Barbie. Like, it's Malibu Barbie, it's beachfront Barbie, it's presidential Barbie, it's
I
all the
got to tell
Barbies.
you,
And so one of the Barbies is Issa Rae, who's a black girl,
you are
an
doing
awkward black
nothing
girl.
you're doing nothing to persuade me I need to see this movie. Can I just talk about Succession for a second? Because
Have you watched it? I still have not watched it, but go ahead. The
we
final
spoke.
season. Did you watch
Yeah,
the final season now?
I watched it. I said I was going to finish it either before or while I was on holiday, and I did. And I'm glad I did. It was a good show. I loved it. I cannot say I enjoyed the last season more than the others.
Oh,
The other seasons were way better. Mostly because, and I don't think that it's worth me saying spoiler alert at this point, because you spoiled White Lotus for everyone, remember? For me.
you cannot spoil nothing for me. You could tell me
Okay.
every single thing that's going to happen, and I'll still enjoy it if I'm going to enjoy it.
So if you are still not, if you still haven't watched Succession final season, then I can't help you. We spoiler alert, it's coming. I'm going to spoil this show. So the reason I hate, the two things I absolutely hated about this last season. The first one is they kill off the dad, the founder.
He has to die. My God.
I know, but really, like episode 3 or 4, he dies, and then from there on, the whole thing becomes very boring because these other characters, you see, this is it's so metaphorical, but I don't care about any of those other characters. I don't have a feeling for any of them. They're all the most dreary, dull, ordinary, uninteresting people in the world. But that father is the one who starts the dynasty. He's the one who makes the billions. He's the most interesting character. He's this ornery, complicated, emotionally stunted genius who just has this ability to make money. And I like him because he's not normal, right? And he's always saying, fuck off, fuck off, fuck off. He hates his children. He hates his wife. He hates everybody. He's just a grumpy, brilliant son of a bitch. And when he dies, I just go, ugh, well, what do I want to watch this for anymore? Because if you put all the other characters together, they're not as interesting as him. So that was number one. The second thing is the guy who eventually ends up at the end of the last episode being
Last
made
man
the
standing.
last man standing, who gets made the CEO, is this Weasley, pathetic, ass-kissing, vicious, like middle management type. And
That sounds about corporate.
exactly, that's what Rena said. So Rena and I were talking about this, and she's like, but that's what actually happens in the real world. And I'm like,
That sounds about corporate.
this isn't meant to be the real world. This is meant to be fiction. So this guy ends up taking over, and it probably irritates me because this is the same reason I don't like reality TVs, because ordinary people are not entertaining. I don't find watching normal people in their normal relationships and their stupid disagreements about normal things. I don't find any of that interesting. So I found it all very depressing and disappointing. Sorry.
If Cousin Greg had become the last man standing,
right. Now we're talking.
Awesome.
Because at least he had personality, right? The rest, oh my God.
If Cousin Greg had been the last man standing, I mean, That would have been awesome.
Apparently, Lucky says there's a lady from Limpopo who was obsessed with
Yep.
Barbie, painted her
Yep.
house in her Hummer pink.
And she's got all the plastic surgery as well. So she's almost plastic too.
Really? I want to see
Yeah.
her. We should get her
I
on the
don't know
show.
what her name is. I don't know what her name is, but I'm sure we'll find her. She's one of those like Instagram influencer types.
We should invite her on the show. Maybe she'll come and talk to us. Don't you think that would be cool?
Please make it on a day I'm not there.
Oh, come on. You're the one who's been carrying on about Barbie for like 15 minutes. I'm
not asking to speak to Barbie. I'm just saying I'm intrigued. That's all.
You don't have to go to Limpopo to find women who've had too much plastic surgery. Sure. And it's not just women anymore.
The BBL has gone. The BBL has the BBL has landed in Joburg.
It's a problem. I was talking to someone just a couple of days ago. Apparently, this is now a guy this woman knows a guy who's going in for jawline surgery. You know where the guy's
What
going?
does that mean?
I don't know.
Do they break their jaw into place or what?
No, they add fillers and stuff to make it look like you have more of a masculine jawline.
Like a square jaw, like Ridge from The Bold and the Beautiful.
That's it. That's what they're doing. So this guy's going in for the surgery. It's someone, I don't really know him. I kind of have met him once through her. But apparently this dude is going in for like a jawline enhancement or whatever you call it. Oh, yeah. No, it's happening. For me, there's some messed up stuff happening out there. Don't you worry. and it's going to cost him a lot of money too. It's not like it's cheap. And this guy's pure vanity. He's going in to look more like a masculine man. That's what he wants. Stupid idiot. Yeah. Wow. Sorry. I love that people are dumb enough to waste their money on shit like that because it keeps the economy going.
Wow. That is, a jawline. That is, I never heard that before. That's crazy. Yeah. No, there's a new show on Netflix, which is a local show. That's basically soft porn. A friend of mine worked on it as an executive producer and showrunner at some, and one of the main actresses. So because there's quite a lot of nudity, or like semi-nudity, I don't know, was telling us at the office about this girl's like realizing in the middle of shooting that this girl's boobs are fake, because as she'd lie down, the boobs would just be like, and when she moves, the boobs just like.
That's great. I like that.
That's just.
I might even watch this stupid show. You've given me one good recommendation and one terrible one this morning. I'm not going to watch Barbie, but I might watch this show that you've just recommended with the nudity. What's it called?
I don't know what it's called.
Come on.
I don't know what it's called. I don't. And because I just literally like 2 days ago saw a she didn't stay till the end because it was too much for her. It was too hectic. And she hated. I'll tell you. I don't know. I'll tell you. It's called Fatal Seduction.
Fatal Seduction. That sounds like a really cheap, low grade, low budget, B grade porn movie on ETV back in the 90s. Like wow, 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 wow.
Tabo, it's called Fatal Seduction. It starts on the 7th of July, apparently, according to this thing. Hey, we must note to producer Ryan. Please call somebody at Netflix and like send them an invoice for this little like.
Seriously, would you be able to? I'd get a headache if I stayed in this stupid Barbie house.
Imagine being the neighbor.
Oh my God. Look at that. That's for real, huh? That's not like some plastic kid's house. That's an actual house.
It's an actual house in actual Malibu. I mean, what is the budget for this marketing?
People will go. I think that's so clever. I think people will go. They'll
Oh,
go and
yeah.
stay. Stupid people. Holy cow, I binged the final season this last weekend. I think George is talking about Succession.
Succession.
Mm-hmm. The plot twist. He liked it. He said the plot twist was cool.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
we're gonna have to agree to disagree there, George. Sorry.
I am. It's on my list of things to watch. It's on my list of things to watch, but I've needed a little bit of a break from watching TV. I've
So,
needed a little.
how much do you think it would cost you to stay in this Barbie and Ken house?
Well, I'm sure we can find out. And if you can't stay in the house, you can stay in the hotel.
Apparently, if you go to airbnb.com and you put /Ken Dream House, let me do this right now and I'll tell you how much it costs. I mean, I find this fascinating. That they'll pay money. They'll pay good money to go and stay there. I know some people who are so into trendy stuff. They're so into like being on top of what everyone is doing and what everyone's into that they would spend this money. Here we go.
$60 a night.
Yeah, I think it's too much. Still, I mean, it's so shit. You should see these cupboards that they give you. It just doesn't look. It looks like it's a toy. It doesn't look real. Like this is the bedroom, and it also doesn't look very weatherproof. I've got to say. Like I think this thing's probably. I mean, if this was in KZN during those storms that we saw this week, it would not stay standing.
Oh, but there's in the Washington Post, it says a day ago, Barbie's dream house will be up for rent, but all stays will be free of charge because Ken couldn't figure out how to put a price on Barbie's Malibu dream house after all.
So is Ken is part of his character? Because I don't know any of this stuff. You might know more about
Ryan
this.
Gosling plays Ken.
No, but is he meant to be like really stupid? Is Ken like an idiot? Because what I mean is, you know how there used to be this slew of characters where there was that like blonde bimbo who was always the supporting actress to some like hulky guy who was the savior. So there was the stereotype of like this dumb blonde bimbo girlfriend. And then I'm wondering if Barbie's the lead character in this and Barbie's the big deal, then is Ken just some
Ken is
really
a bit like that.
He's a moron, right? He's a very stupid man. Is that it? Is that it? He's a bonehead.
So
Ken is a bonehead.
If I remember kind of the 90s, because there were 90s cartoons that were like Barbie cartoons, right? He is just Barbie's super fan, right? He's the boyfriend and he's Barbie's super fan. He's not a himbo all the way, but he's
what's a himbo?
A him bimbo.
Oh, okay. You're teaching me new words here. I didn't know what a himbo was. Where did you get that word? Did you just make that up?
It's always been around.
No.
Yes.
Himbo?
Yes.
Never heard of this.
Gareth, this has always been a word.
Well, okay. I'm learning new things here. All right. But let's move on, please, because this Ken thing this Ken and Barbie stuff is going to drive me crazy. Karine, at least Barbie has lived for 100 years. Time trumps everything, says George Meany. Yeah, I suppose that's a good point. Soon you will, ladies and gentlemen, get ready. If Pumi's right, we're going to be absolutely covered, deluged by Barbie and Ken merchandise in the next couple
July,
of weeks.
I'm telling you now.
Get ready, everybody. Ken was trans before it was popular. He doesn't have a PP, says Rajesh.
Listen, I see people here saying I'm making up this word himbo. Listen, just Google it. Google it. It's there. It's a word. It's been around for a long time. Lona, I don't know you people. This English
Himbo.
language.
I've never heard that term before. Honestly. Himbo, a good-looking but unintelligent young man. You were right.
Ta-da.
Okay, it exists. I just saw it on dictionary.com. It must be true. All right. Well, it's almost time for us to wrap up this hour. We've got the burning platform coming up just now with Dumo Denga. Fikile Mbalula is in some row over a frozen luxury Bryanston house. Surprise, surprise. Plus, we got an email this week from somebody who is a major supporter of Paul Mashatile. And apparently, Paul Mashatile has been living it up. Have you seen this? There was an expose in News 24 about how Paul Mashatile is just having the best time. He is living in some enormous house in Cape Town. He's got, women visiting him there at all hours of the day and night. This is what they say. He's driving expensive luxury cars around. Sounds like it's good to be Paul Mashatile. What's his official job right now? What is his actual job?
He's the deputy president.
I mean, that's ever been a real job. That's never.
He is the deputy president. He's been giving speeches and talks. He's been holding court with the various stakeholders of government.
All right. Well, I'll read to you what News 24 say about him in the next hour, because we'll get to that in a little bit. But all of it.
The one news headline that I do want people at the end, later on today. I just don't know what time, because they haven't said what time. And this is going to be a little punt for last week's show, which we talked about, because it was a year since the Zondo report, is Raymond Zondo was speaking at an HSRC symposium about a week ago. And he was essentially just lambasting Parliament for dragging its feet on some of his recommendations. And this week, yesterday, in fact, there was a high-level meeting with representatives of Parliament, basically Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula and Amos Masondo, the chairperson of the NCOP. So this afternoon, they're going to be holding a press briefing to tell us about that conversation, because they all flew up in a huff to have a meeting with the Chief Justice regarding these unpalatable comments of his.
Do you think anything will come of it? Exactly. All right, it is 7:00. We'll be back with more in just a moment or two. The burning platform on the way. cliffcentral.com. Good morning, Barbies and Kens.
Hi, I'm Barrett Edelstein. Join me for my podcast, Celeb Savant. Today I'm with Sophie Ellis-Bextor.
So right at the moment, I'm at home in London, but after I speak to you, I'm going to pack my bags.
3 of the members of UB40, Earl, Matt, and Jimmy.
Well, we're in the middle of a tour at the moment.
A career retrospective with actors, singers, and entertainment industry experts every Friday morning at 9:00 on cliffcentral.com or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
This week on the Auto Trader podcast.
I like this terminology thing. A lot of people don't understand these things, and quite often when people read something, they Google's a big benefit now because you can just quickly Google it on your phone.
Yeah.
But in 10, 20 years ago, somebody said something like, "What is MIDP?" and you didn't know, you wouldn't ask.
Exactly. I was about to say exactly that. I think a lot of people go to the dealership. They do their research. I think a lot of people do research, but you don't know what you don't know, right? So they just get there and they told a bunch of stuff, lots of terminology, lots of terms, and they don't want to, just say, what does that mean?
Catch us every Monday at 9 a.m. on YouTube and on autotrader.co.za.
All right, it is time for the Burning Platform with me and Pumi Mashiko, and we will be joined this morning by Dumo Denga, who's, of course, a libertarian co-host and founder of the Man Patriot podcast, someone we've had on the show many times before. Dumo, nice to see you. How are you?
How you doing, Gareth? How you doing, Pumi? It's great to be on again. Looking forward to having a good discussion today. Yes.
And can I just say how much of a pleasure it is having someone on who also has good sound? Because we often, people in the audience will say, "Oh, that guest, your guest sounded terrible." Like we've got to run from one corner of the earth to the other corner of the earth to supply people with microphones and headphones. But it seems to me you've got a very good setup there, and I appreciate it enormously. So we can talk without interruptions and without having echoes and noise and all kinds of other stuff. So thank you for that.
Perfect.
Good to see you again.
Likewise,
Listen,
Pumi.
I do want to let you know, Dumo, that I have been avoiding reading this this amendment to the water rights thing. I've been avoiding it. And when Dory told me you were coming on, it's one of the things you wanted to talk about, I did swear a little. I just want you to know.
So first of all, I mean, the obvious question is, why have you been avoiding it? Just because you think it's very boring, or you think it's pointless, or you think it's stupid, or what?
Because I think there's a lot that needs to be understood about what's going on outside of the hysteria before you can properly weigh in on what's happening. Because the issuing of water rights is not new. It's, and it comes from a particular place and space. And this is not the first amendment, actually. This is not the first amendment that's been written. And so I've been avoiding it because I'm also kind of thinking we're living in a huge kind of echo chamber right now, where there are extremely loud voices who have a particular view and agenda. And that's all we ever hear, because we don't have a strong enough media anymore. We just, it's the newsroom has been too juniorized, and there's not enough time or money to do a thorough deep dive into what's happening, where it comes from, what are the implications, all of that kind of stuff. So if you have the megaphone, that's what we hear. And so I've been kind of like,
Well, I don't think you
needed
need
some digging.
I don't think you need any of that. I think that you can, on principle, based on what we already know, discuss this on a theoretical level. I think we have to some degree in a previous episode. I remember we had this conversation, Pumi, with you and I and one of our other guests. Is it ever okay to have legislation that discriminates on the basis of race for whatever reason? You can justify that any way you like. Hitler would have, Stalin would have. There are people in America right now who believe in race-based policies. How do we feel about that a priori, before we even look at any of the detail? And if we think that it's okay to discriminate based on race or gender or anything else, then you're in a certain category. And I just don't see a way down from that. But if you say that it's all about the detail, then we can get into that just now. I'm happy.
Dumo wants to talk about it, so let him go first.
Go ahead.
Right. So I just read a piece about this, right, on Business Tech. And what is very interesting about this is that it looks like when it comes to issuing out water rights, in order to do that, what you need is that you'll need like to have certain ownership. You have to meet certain ownership criteria and so forth. Now, now on principle, as Gareth said, the problem with something like this, right, is that it's the government is actually getting involved in something that I believe that they shouldn't be getting involved in. Now, I do think that, water is a scarce resource. I do think that the private market can provide for it very well without government interference. And now if you're going to try and let's say, create some sort of legislation that states that, well, if you want to provide so much water, then you need so much ownership of people of a certain skin color. I think for me, that's not necessary. It's arbitrary, in my opinion. If there are people that want to, provide water, then I think that, then they should just be given a license. There needs not to be any, in my opinion, what's the right word? There needs to be no restrictions on that, in my opinion. And then they can compete for customers that way.
Yeah, Pums,
So this is what I'm saying, right? So first of all, we have to understand that the resource of water is regulated by the government. In order to ensure that there is water available for everyone, it's that we're not going to get away from. That's how it is all over the world. But I think what has been fascinating for me with this, and having now done all of this reading, guys, to understand that what we're talking about is we're talking about the fact that in 2004, 98% of all available water licenses had already been allocated in 2004, right? So what we're talking about now is we're talking about the issuing of new licenses in respect to 2% of the available water resource. And then understanding that this particular issue of race is one of 12 criteria that they have in place, right? And this is what I was saying. This is what kind of was driving me crazy. And the one that everybody is looking at is this one thing in a list of 12, right?
So what are the other criteria? I mean, what else are they looking
at? And it's various things, right? So it's about storage, it's about the size of your land, it's about the uses, it's about how you're getting the water. Is it a dam? Is it all of that stuff, right? It's different, and there are different licenses and different usages depending on how and where you get your water from. Is it groundwater? Is it underground water? Is it a stream, a river, a lake? In your land? Is it all of those things? And none of that is in the public discourse right now, right? And then over and above that, to think about the fact that of this 98% of licenses that have already been given out, right? We are sitting with a 3-to-1 ratio, 313 million cubic liters of available licenses have been allocated, and they've been allocated to large white commercial farms. And only 99 million have been allocated to small newcomer, black, colored, Indian, whatever, farmers, right? So now when you hear all of that in its entirety, you're kind of going, oh, okay, so when new licenses come up, what are these criteria? And race is one of 12. But all we hear about is oh, no, the government is, now only considering race to giving new licenses. But nobody's having these conversations. So the one article that you read, Dumo, that raises this ire in you is missing 99% of the information.
And I'm glad you mentioned the other 99%, because that actually solidifies my point about licenses. Now it's not only race, there's more categories that are used to determine if someone should get a license. That's not good for any management of any scarce resource, because the problem is that now you've got this body, they can create whatever categories they want on who should get a license and what's the criteria that should be met. And as a result of that, that could actually what's the right word? It could actually decrease innovations in that sector or in that industry to make water actually, will make the water or get more water that's available. Unfortunately, when you have license restrictions, you're going to create cartels. And the people that make the decisions, they can be influenced by government or whoever to keep people out. That's what licenses are there for anyway. So if race is one category, fine. But if there's more categories that are used to decide who gets a license, that solidifies my point. It's even worse. So that's why I say we should not even have any criteria. If you want to provide water, provide water.
So Pumi, with all that you've read, and you've gone to the trouble of doing the research on this, which I appreciate, because most of us won't. So you're going to give us a précis, which you kind of have already. So based on what you've told us and on the things that you haven't even told us that you read, what is your overall feeling about this proposed legislation? Do you think it's good? Do you think it's balanced? Do you think we should take it a little more seriously and not just dismiss it out of hand?
I think we need to take it more seriously and not dismiss it. And the issue of water is one that I have a very close association with, as you know, with some of the projects that we've worked on in my other work. And what we see is places and areas that actually have plenty of water available. There is enough water in those areas for everybody. However, the way that the licenses have been issued and who has access, people have dammed up water. So you have literally adjacent communities. One, in fact, in this particular place that I'm thinking about, 3 huge commercial farmers who use completely unsustainable and outdated ways of irrigating their land have dammed up the water. And then you have next to it, adjacent to that, a community of about 3,000 people who have no access to water, who have to dig a dam and share that water with animals, right? Come on. There has to be a way in which to consider everybody. The resource is scarce, not just for some people. The resource is scarce for all people. And we have to consider that we have to find a way in which everybody can participate. And that way requires more than just one thing. So when I say to you that the ways that these old commercial farmers are outdated, not just in South Africa, outdated all over the world. And that hasn't come. Why? Because they have their historical license, which allowed them to bypass this community and leave that community with no access. And at some point, we have to consider a way that re-establishes a norm and allows everybody access.
All right. So let's talk, because none of us are in government and none of us have water licenses, as far as I can tell. But possibly none of our listeners even have water licenses. So from the point of view of what might be the ideal situation, I have to again illustrate with some sense of pragmatism that government may not be the best means of allocating these rights, and that government, and I'm not saying that the private sector is necessarily the only other option, but we know that our government is hopelessly inefficient in every single way. So how could we imagine that they would be efficient in dealing with this issue? Remember, a law is only as good as the paper it's written on, and is only as good as the enforcement of that law might be. I don't think that a government that is unable to keep the roads from falling apart, that a government that's unable to keep the lights on, will in any way be able to police water licenses. They have no idea of how many liters of water are going this way, that way, or the other. They have no idea of where boreholes are being sunk. They have no idea of where pipes burst or they don't. They don't know any of this stuff. So how the hell are they going to enforce any of this anyway? It's pure theory. Or am I being, again, utopian?
Well, Dumo, I'd like to hear more than that. What then you propose is a potential solution?
Yeah,
given that you
okay.
read this one article that has raised your ire
Right.
about this thing.
So personally, I don't think the government should be issuing out licenses for water, right?
But they
I
do
just think that
all over the world.
No, exactly. Even if they do,
So
it doesn't mean that they should.
what- so what's-
it doesn't mean
what's
that they
your-
should. So what I'm saying is that we shouldn't have this, right? What should rather happen is that the people who own the property or who own the land or the streams or whatever, they should have they should determine what happens to their water. Now, the thing about water is that there are many ways in which you can obtain it. I don't think you can only get it from streams and so forth. There's also rain, there's also desalination, all these other technologies that are available that can make water easily available. And I think if the government can just like step out and allow people who are closer to the problem to figure out solutions, then I think you'll see these innovations come up. But the problem now is that when you issue out licenses, you build the cartels, you keep the innovative people out, and you only keep people that you want in. And then as a result, you get that situation that you mentioned now, where you have these farmers with all these, you said with all these irrigation structures where the community next to it has no water, but they got a lot of water. And it's because the licenses allow that.
The impracticality of what you are saying,
exactly.
Dumo, the impracticality of what you are saying, right, then means people like you and I and Gareth who live in cities, who don't have access to boreholes, there's no opportunity, because then all of us have to be reliant on some farmers who have the access to the water.
Not necessarily.
To share it with us. To share it
Not
with us
necessarily.
at a particular cost. How would that happen? How would that work?
So there are many ways to deliver this service, right? You don't have to have piped water. I mean, if you look at households now, they have JoJo tanks and they collect rainwater. People do their own water harvesting as well. So I don't see how it'll be so difficult for someone to harvest their own water, or at the same time, even get water delivered to them, put in a tank, and then they can use it, and it can get refilled every week. There are so many ways of doing that. Like even where I live, the one time the municipality, they failed in their water service delivery. And then guess what happened? They called a private water tanker guy to come through. He came through, filled up the tanks, and we had water for the day. There are many ways to deliver the service. But the problem is that the government's involvement in this is killing the innovation. Trust me, I want everyone to get water. And I think the best way to do it is that you allow people that are closer to the problem to solve it. And I think a market-based solution is the best way of doing it.
I think we've learned from this cholera outbreak in Hammanskraal and Soshanguve that clearly when government is in charge of water, it can go horribly, horribly wrong. I think that there's something really twisted and perverse about things which are abundant in nature. I'm surprised that the ANC hasn't even found a way yet to tax us for the air that we breathe. They will no doubt try and do that at some point too. And it's all pure. It's pure grabbing of resources for the state to monopolize control. I don't think a lot of this is actually coming from a good place anyway. I don't think that they sit there and go, okay, we really need to decide how we can make sure that all South Africans have clean, fresh water and that they have an availability of an abundance of water. I don't think there's any of that happening. They look at it and they go, right, just like with mineral rights, let's find a way that we can monopolize control of all of this.
You know what? It's a little bit
of the asset.
No, you know what it's also a little bit about? It's also a little bit about navel gazing, right? We're all dissatisfied with the particular government that we have in place. And so every single thing that comes at us, we can only see through the very small hole of we hate this government and they're incompetent and they don't do anything right. But what we fail to do is we then, even in this conversation that we're having, we're failing to look at a wider lens that says, what are the practices around the world? I mean, there are countries that are in the desert like Israel, for crying out loud, and they have managed to create their government, in conjunction with their universities, have managed to create an environment which works, that allows the access for everybody, and B, an innovative way of moving forward regarding this. And what we're not doing, we're not looking at all of those things and saying, right, how does that work over there, and how is what we have available to us and what is being proposed, how are those things equitable? How are those things compatible? And what does that actually mean going forward? Because we're so angry and dissatisfied about this one particular group of people, which we should be able to change if we're that dissatisfied.
I do think it's a question of what comes first, the chicken or the egg here. And I don't disagree with you, Pumi, that we do get very myopic about zoning in and how useless our government are. But the very next topic of conversation, and one that we covered, as I mentioned, with Jonathan Witt not so long ago, is the NHI. Another example of where if we only had a few people of merit and of moderate competence in control of this country, we wouldn't be having these discussions, because they would be simple, practical application of people who understand, who have a knowledge of the subject matter, who would be able to sit there and go, all right, this is the best way to administer this thing, whether it's medical insurance, public health, water, electricity, budgets, all of this stuff. We just need competent people. So it's not only a question of us looking through that little hole that you spoke about, but it's a question of who's looking back at us. And it's a bunch of complete ignoramuses.
The proposed NHI, as we're looking at it here, is a replica of what they have in the UK, right? And speaking of apparently a bunch of competent people, the entire idea of how it works, and in fact, the consulting company that was responsible for implementing it in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
Dun, da, 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 take a wild guess. My favorite consultants in the world, McKinsey.
Yeah.
So all of all of those things, I just, and it's about motivations of the various components of people that are involved in these things. When you were speaking with Jonathan about it, you spoke extensively about the involvement of Discovery in this matter. But what you didn't speak about is, oh, surprise, surprise, who is one of Cyril Ramaphosa and the ANC's biggest funders?
Who?
Discovery.
Okay. All right. Well, that tells you a lot. So, okay, you see, because they obviously
But Duma wanted to say something. Duma wanted to say something about the NHI.
Yeah, I think what you guys are mentioning is exactly what I would expect, really, because the problem with the NHI, it's not only the cronyism that'll come up as a result. It's just that it will never achieve the objectives that the government says it will. Like they say, they want to provide equitable healthcare and free healthcare that's decent and everything like that. That is not going to happen. You see, whenever the means of production are centralized, you can never make economic calculations, which means you can never make profits or loss calculations. And as a result of that, you're going to get massive resource misallocations. So if you look at the British NHS, for example, they always have a crisis where there's not enough beds, or there are people that are sick that are waiting in the hallways and are dying there. And even in South Africa, we have that as well, because of the fact that there's no profits and loss calculations. And as a result of that, you cannot find the most optimal way of combining resources so that you can provide something that's affordable and effective, because now everything is being centralized. And also at the same time, I mean, you as a patient, in the NHI, it's going to be a bad thing, because you may need a particular set of treatments and the government can just say, well, you're not getting it. And we've seen what happened in the NHS. Another example was when there was this kid, I forgot his name, but he needed a machine to help him breathe. And he was disallowed by his own government to go to another country to get treatment. So basically, they own you. And as a libertarian, that violates the self-ownership principle. We own our own bodies. Therefore, we should be able to choose which treatments we want. And the government shouldn't be the one that determines it.
Duma, I also think you hinted at something there which could be a practical way to attack this monster, whether it's water or NHI or anything else, is that we need to decentralize these things. Central planning is a bad idea, full stop. If we didn't learn that from the Soviet Union, we'll never learn it. And it's obvious to me that the ANC in particular are obsessed with outdated and demonstrably stupid ideas, like central planning. Everything like this needs to be devolved to the local level. You need hospitals being able to decide for themselves. They've got managers, they've got administrators. There are ways to do this that don't need to involve a minister and cabinet and parliament. It doesn't make any sense when it comes to people's individual private or public health care that they need to be referring this to the national government the whole time. The national government can certainly provide money for those things, but the administration of those things has nothing to do with a minister of health. It doesn't make any sense to me that that person should be the one to decide whether Pumi gets ticked off for this operation, whether you're allowed to access that kind of private healthcare, whether I'm allowed to put money into a fund with a bunch of other people because we want to fund our own, hospital plan going forward. I don't see how that's got anything to do with whoever the Minister of Health is at any given time.
Agreed. And just another thing, forget about the NHI for a second. Our current legislation with regards to healthcare, it's atrocious. That also kills innovation, especially with regards to medical aids, like minimum prescribed benefits, for example, where you are forced to fund the treatments of diseases that you may not get or that you may not even need. Like, for example, like type 2 diabetes, for example, which is lifestyle related. I think that, for example, if you look at what I suggest is that when you look at the minimum prescribed benefits and the current legislation, that needs to change, especially even when you build hospitals now. They say you need to get approval from the Minister of Health. I mean, what does he know? What does he know about you having a hospital there? I mean, if you build a hospital and it fails, you can always sell the building and they can, repurpose it for something else. But now the Minister of Health has to check that because they don't want, quote unquote, over-servicing. That's ridiculous. The person who's building it is going to pay the price if he made the wrong choice. But now if the government does it and no one uses it, now the taxpayers pay, and then you just got a standing building there that no one's going into. Like in China, they've ghost cities. Because again, resource misallocations, because you cannot make profit and loss calculations if you centralize the means of production. It's that simple. So again, decentralize it. We need mass decentralization in the healthcare sector. And again, what you'll find better healthcare innovations, you'll find cheaper healthcare, and you'll find more effective healthcare as well. And we'll live for longer. We might even live for like 150. And then then we have another problem, which is that, our pensions lost for that long. And then we have to decentralize that and see what happens. But the problems that I want to have is the problems of abundance. When we have too much of something.
Will our pensions last that long?
Exactly.
Do you recognize the fact that we currently have an almost 50% unemployment rate and 74% of young people aren't in any form of employment? Where's their pension going to come from? They're not working. Where's their pension going to come from? But I think one of the things that South Africa is
I'll tell you what you don't do, Pumi. I'll tell you what you don't do is you don't go and take from the people who've been saving their whole life long, domestic workers who've been putting money into a pension fund, people who've been working for businesses, people who've been putting away their own savings. You don't go and rape those people's savings in order to pay for people who don't have any. That's something that seems completely unfair to me.
Okay.
And just one
South
thing.
Africa are in a perfect storm where we have our government and labor and business all being on the same side, and the people who are at a loss are all of us, all the people who are not in those positions, right? So we have, on the one side, we have, our Minister of Health at a press conference standing next to one of the heads of I think at the time it was Life, right? A hospital group, and all of them. And, and as we know, because of their tripartite alliance, the labor movements are all on the side of whatever it is that the government says. So we're I know people don't like it when I swear, but, to put it mildly, the people, we're all hoist on our own petard, with regard to this particular thing, because they are in cahoots. You know, when we speak about McKinsey, when we speak about Discovery, when we speak about the government, all of these individuals and shareholders, to a large extent, all of them have a common goal. And their common goal is to make as much money as they can for themselves.
Well, that's what Stink Mina says. Private sector only cares about profit, Dumo. So what do you say to that?
Yeah, of course they do. But it's not like as if the profit is in abundance. In order for them to get that profit, they need to provide a service at a price that people are willing to pay. So they have to negotiate a price. And if the price is too expensive, people will find other means of actually getting that service so good. So even if they do care about profit, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter at the end of the day, as long as they are competing. Because what's going to happen is, let's say, for example, they charge too high of a price and you have a competitive market where people can come in. The next person that comes in is going to charge a lower price. And then that person who's charging a higher price is going to lose customers as a result of that. So at the end, I think what people think is that that when people chase profits, they're just going to ramp up the price as high as possible. But if that was the case, we would have been seeing that already right now. No, that's not the case. The reality is that the people that are selling these goods and services, they know for a fact that other people can take customers away from them, and they know that their customers have limited resources as well. So they have to price accordingly.
Dumo, that's a very simple way of looking. That's a very simple way of looking at something that's really complex, including what they call input costs. You know, so it's never only just the market that determines what things are. People get priced out of markets all the time, and many
that's competition.
Priced out of markets.
That's competition. That's competition. But if you can't afford, that's competition. That's how it works, right? So you're gonna have input costs, but no, listen, hold on, just one point. You're gonna have your input costs, but when they become too expensive, what happens is that the competitors will know the prices for specific input costs, and then if you allow them to compete, they can find cheaper ways of providing the service so that they can actually provide a cheaper a cheaper product at the end of the day. That's what happens, because remember, if you're competing, if you're selling Fed Cook for 10 Rand and I'm selling it for 5 Rand, who are people going to buy from? They're going to buy from me because I'm selling it for cheaper.
Except for the fact that if the input cost is 5 Rand, nobody is selling it for 5 Rand.
But if I can find a way to produce Fed Cook cheaper than you so that I can sell it at a cheaper price, then I am winning. And that's what we do. That's what companies do. That is what competitors do. They look at the input costs.
That's why
and
there
then
are
they
minimum
do that.
prices to everything.
No. There are minimum prices. But again, if you allow people to compete, the prices will go down because they're going to find cheaper ways of providing that service. That's what happens.
where you have Gareth, you go.
No, Pums, go finish this. I think we have to move on.
No, I do think we have to move on, simply because, Dumo, what you have simplified in your mind and what sounds like in your mind it makes sense, doesn't make sense in the real world.
It does make sense in the real world. There's a lot of evidence for that. Look at the airlines industry. The airlines industry is a perfect example of that. When they deregulated, you got your low-cost airlines and people could fly for cheaper. That's what happened. There's a real life evidence for that. So you can't tell me that it's in my mind. There's a lot of evidence for that.
So let's talk about that, right? When there are also what you have, particularly in the airline business, as we have been watching here in South Africa with the collapse of SAA, is that actually when you don't have a regulator of price in terms of, and like what we had, and we were just talking about the fact that I had to travel a 14-hour journey, which would take 14 hours, 33 hours, essentially, because we don't have our own carrier that would allow us to be able to regulate what that price is, but also create an environment of competition that is slightly different to what we have right now. So right now, to get anywhere, you have to travel to another country first before you can get anywhere.
But Pums, I think
I disagree, but
I think that's fine. It's okay.
I think you're saying we need a regulator. I think we need more competition, which again feeds into what Dumo's saying. In any case, the fact is we've all been, whether you are dependent on the public health system, which is a dangerous place to find yourself in South Africa, or if you are the sort of person who's been able to afford medical aid, which is exorbitantly expensive in South Africa, either way, you're screwed, right? Neither is great. Am I correct?
Back
Anyway,
to what I was
I
saying,
agree.
we have where business and labor and government are in cahoots. The end game is that the loser is you.
okay, so let's look at something else, because I don't want us to get frustrated on this subject, and it can get very
Are we?
frustrating. We've sort of covered, we did water in a previous episode, we've done NHI in a previous episode, and we've done the next subject in a previous episode, but I do want to hear Dumo's take on it. So what do you have to say about Russia and the Ukraine? And I mean, I see that Naledi Pandor has things to say about this.
As
Russian mutiny
always.
won't derail African efforts to end the Ukraine war. Who's listening to Naledi Pandor in the Ukraine or Russia, for God's sake? And who was listening to Cyril the other day in Poland when he arrived there with a plane full of soldiers with guns? What are these idiots doing? Have they not picked up the basic diplomacy guidebook? Why are they embarrassing us on the national stage and throwing away what little credibility we still have?
Yeah, I mean, okay, just a quick view on Russia and Ukraine. Obviously, I want that war to end as soon as possible.
Yes.
Obviously, you know, I'm not going to condone Putin's actions, but I understand why he did what he did. But that's not to say that what he did was correct. But again, NATO is a big player here. And I think that NATO, in my opinion, given the fact that the Soviet Union, sorry guys, my camera battery ran out, so I'll just connect the
all right,
charger
that's
now.
okay.
But yeah, but just given that, I think that you know, just given all of that, I think we can find a peaceful negotiation to this. And what I don't want is that this war actually escalates to a nuclear war, because that would just be crazy. Because if Russia feels like they have no other choice, I think they might go nuclear. And I don't want that to happen. But again, now, if you look at South Africa's involvement in this, I think South Africa, we tried to be neutral. We tried to say, hey, it's none of our business and everything. And then, you know, we found there was that allegations of weapons being transported to Russia and so forth. And that doesn't look good. And yeah, and also the whole situation that happened in Poland as well. In my opinion, I just feel that, I don't know, it was just like, you know, theater politics at the end of the day. Perhaps Poland was just trying to be difficult towards South Africa. Given their stance on the war, they haven't really taken a stance. So they're probably trying to pressure them. I don't know I think they probably aren't part of NATO. Who knows? But again, even Ramaphosa as well, I don't think many people are listening to him as well. Because again, he's not the one who calls the shots. At the end of the day, the person who calls the shots right now is Joe Biden, because the USA is the head of NATO.
No,
and
it's not Joe Biden. It's whoever's handling Joe Biden. It's whoever's whoever's shepherding him around the White House and the Oval Office. It's whoever's pushing him around in a wheelchair or helping him to decide which direction to turn his head in. It's not Joe Biden. Pums, do you have any updates? While Dumo's busy figuring out his camera, do you have any updates on your opinion on this?
You know, on at the moment, all we can do is scenario plan or strategy speculations, right? Because this is an ever rapidly developing experience. I think if anything, when we woke up to see Prigozhin marching on Moscow, essentially, that was something we all hadn't seen coming. Nobody had seen that coming. That conversation hadn't, even as we watched him shouting at Gerasimov in, was it February or March, on all those videos that were leaked. Nobody could have imagined that this is the way things would turn out. And my view, and I have a theory on this, is now that Prigozhin is out in Belarus,
yes,
I think it's a ruse. I think it's a ruse very similar to this last front that they were fighting, where again, Prigozhin being the key player, where they seemed to be withdrawing, right? And they drew the Ukrainian troops in. And what they did was they splintered. As they were withdrawing, they splintered. And what you saw is the Ukrainian forces being forced to also disintegrate and then have to fight on multiple fronts. And then they were able to come back and have a counteroffensive. And that's how they were able to take over that particular what's it called? All these Russian names that we have to remember, it just completely freaked me out. But now, when you see him march on Moscow, and then it's an 11-hour march that he was embarking on. It was clear from the jump that they're not going to make it all the way to Moscow. But what it looked like a big disagreement within the ranks in the Russian army.
Clearly.
But the fact that he has been allowed to go, and with Lukashenko being the person who brokered this peace, and now moving this individual and some of his armed forces to Belarus, which is in a different flank that hasn't been, where Russia hasn't been, right? In a friendly state, because Belarus is friendly to Russia, on another flank of the Ukraine and closer to Kiev. I think it's a ruse, and I think we're going to see another opening of a different fighting front, which the Ukrainian forces cannot afford, because the Ukrainian forces are not in Kiev. They've gone out, So I think we're watching a still developing situation. And for America, all they have to do is they just have to keep Russia engaged and bleed them, essentially. They're going to bleed them of money. They're just going to keep them engaged. And this morning we wake up and hear that Poland has agreed to allow the Ukraine to launch missiles, ground missile strikes from Poland. So it's still, the theater is still engaged, friends. The theater is still engaged. And I think we're still going to see many turns in this environment. But with regard to South Africa's peace mission, I think it was posturing that they don't need to have. They really don't need it. I think that if Cyril Ramaphosa wants to rebuild his credibility as any kind of intermediary or peace negotiator, he's got the perfect place to start in Sudan. He's got the perfect place to start in Sudan. Where he actually can make a difference. And that would give him a little bit more credibility in the world as well. I mean, that was Thabo Mbeki's strategy, right? That's where he started. He honed his teeth on the continent. And then they invited them into Ireland. You know what I'm saying? That I don't know if the guys look at all the scenarios or if they're just kind of lurching from thing to thing.
Let me bring things home a little bit. Paul Mashatile has been in the news. Apparently, News 24 have got this issue. They call it Mashatile Unmasked, which they've just put together. Deputy President Paul Mashatile leads a life of luxury and seeming excess, using multi-million rand homes owned by tenderpreneurs and beneficiaries of government contracts on Cape Town's exclusive Atlantic seaboard to entertain a string of lovers and friends. Mashatile is open about his ambition to supplant Cyril Ramaphosa at the next election, has also perfected the art of attaining what appears to be beneficial ownership without having it registered in his name. Nor does he pay directly for it or explain the source of his benefaction. Regular companions and sources with direct access to Mashatile and his lifestyle say he almost never pays for anything directly out of his own pocket. We're going to try and get a Paul Mashatile supporter on the show to try and explain this away. But do either of you have
an email? Did you get an email?
I got an email from somebody. Yeah, and they said that they want to come in and defend him. They said, we need Paul Mashatile. Without him, things get even worse. Do you have anything to say? Is anything about this surprising, first of all, to you, Dumo or Pumi? And second of all, what do you think is going on here? Do you think it's worthy of more inspection?
Well, I'm not surprised. I think that if you are a high-ranking government official, you'll have access to a lot of people, because again, you're part of an agency that has a monopoly on ultimate decision making. So you are going to, so people are going to want favors from you. So Paul Mashatile being the vice president, I think that a lot of people would like to be on his good side because, hey, who knows? I mean, he might, help institute a law that might help your business and stuff like that, which goes back to the cronyism that we were talking about earlier. So this is not surprising. I think this is what I would expect given given that we have a state and that there are people that want to get favors from them. And I don't know. I mean, if you're going to get this guy who's going to defend him, I'd like to see what he's going to say. I think he's probably going to rely more on the fact that from a policy point of view or from a party point of view, he might be the right guy. But I won't be surprised to see if there are any other high-ranking government officials that are also in the same mess that he's involved in right now. Or when I say mess, I put that in quote-unquote mess. Or, yeah, that's what I would say.
I'm not surprised at all. I live in Gauteng, remember? So I was here when Paul Mashatile was the premier. I was here, and none of these things that News 24 is reporting on is new. This is Paul Mashatile's lifestyle. This is how he was when he was the premier. This is how he lives his life. It doesn't surprise me at all. But I think this then gives me almost all of the things that we've spoken about today, gives me my in for my weekly harping on about why it is important now more than ever for anybody and everybody that has a view about what we need to do in terms of bringing down the ANC and changing the government. This is it. This is why it's important that you not only go out and vote, but you get as many young people registered and informed about how to vote and what they should be considering when they are voting, because next year's election is that important, right? So all of these things, all of these bills, all of these proposals have to go through a parliamentary process as well. And for as long as we have a majority number of seats in our parliament that are in the hands of this one particular party, we're again gonna be completely hoist on our own petard. This is why it is important. And a lot of people kind of think, you were talking about why more competition is important. A lot of people think in a very reductionist way when it comes to thinking about politics and voting and who to vote for. This is also an environment that, quite perversely requires more players in order to be able to whittle down the super block that is able to ram things through Parliament. So this is it, guys.
Well, let's not move on in a hurry, because the wife of former National Lotteries Commission Chief Operating Officer Philemon Ledwaba has claimed that under oath her company loaned 3 million rand to Fikile Mbalula to help him buy a luxury home in the upmarket suburb of Bryanston in Johannesburg. Ledwaba resigned under a cloud while on suspension pending a disciplinary hearing, where he would have faced the charges of money laundering and abusing his position to enrich himself and his family. So this is the lottery money. This is the money that poor South Africans, it's not rich people who are buying lottery tickets, poor South Africans are putting in the desperate hope of getting something back, of winning something, or of that money, if they are completely altruistic, which I don't believe exists, but if there are people like that, they're giving it to the Lottery Commission so that they can give it to desiring and deserving charities, of which there are millions in South Africa. But what are they doing with this lottery money? They're lending it to Fikile Mbalula to buy a house in Bryanston. 3 million rand of it. Do me a favor.
The SIU is taking scalps, kicking ass, and taking names, because the part of the reason why we know this is because of SIU investigations. But all that doesn't matter if our wonderful Shamila Patoi and her team don't get moving. None of this matters.
What the hell are we paying for at that NPA at the moment? I do not understand. Okay, guys, I don't expect you to say anything else about that, because it's just something we need to know about. I see lots of people. Max Sony keeps saying that Gareth's idea of a tax revolt is the only solution. Dumo, do you have any thoughts on a tax revolt? It's come up. It even came up with Justice Malala when he was here for his book launch a couple of days ago.
Right. Yeah. The thing about a tax revolt, I mean, I can understand the objectives that it's trying to achieve. I don't know if it'll be so prudent because remember, the state is. I mean, as much as I'm a libertarian and I am not a big fan of the state getting involved in people's lives and being invasive. The state has a lot of power, and I think that if one wants to attempt a tax revolt, be prepared for the state to come after you because you are literally going after their main source, of income. So maybe maybe if you want to say tax revolt in the sense that I'll use cash only, well, that's probably tax avoidance. But yeah, tax avoidance, that sounds great. But the moment you go, let's say, in like when you say I'm not going to pay tax, or you go in the tax evasion direction, I don't think that would work out well for you. So I think for me, best thing is fine, use cash as much as possible, try to pay as little tax as possible legally. But I just think the whole battle is actually to get people on board on trying to decentralize, and that is more of a conversation with regards to trying to convince people. So yeah, that's my thing. But tax revolt, it might work, may not work, but the state is way too powerful, in my opinion.
One last thing before we wrap it up this morning. Transport Minister Sindisiwe Chikunga, another minister we've only just heard about now, says the rollout of new driver's license cards in South Africa will help the department tackle two big problems: corruption and the stubborn backlog of applications. And
what were those sounds you were making this morning that helped wake you up? I have a cackling sound that I'd like to share right about now with regard to that little tidbit.
Go on.
Really? Combat what? Corruption? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
In the Department of Transport. Anyway, so this.
What I hoped
around South Africa without licenses anyway, and just don't give a shit.
Have you seen the Uber Eats drivers? The one thing that I was hoping we would talk about, especially in the news headlines, is there's a video that's making rounds about a shooting in Braamfontein. An SAPS officer and a JMPD officer were in an altercation, drunken altercation in the middle of the night outside a club in Braamfontein. In the video that you see the one kind of shouting and toting his gun and all of that stuff. And I understand that is the JMPD officer. And the one that's in the car is the SAPS officer, and he eventually shoots the one outside the car, and it's all on gruesome video. But when I saw that video yesterday, or whenever it came through, or the day before, when I saw that video, I thought to myself, this video is such a clear demonstration of, in a very small microcosm, of the problems that we face when it comes to our law enforcement environment in South Africa. We have many undisciplined officers. Mm-hmm. And then we have many factions of police enforcement, as it were. And they are in competition with each other. But because they all exist in all of these little silos that they exist in, we're all just generally fucked by the fact that each and every one of them see themselves separately and superior to the others.
Yep.
And so we're always caught as the general public. We're then caught in the tailspin of it all, right? Where they don't work together and they don't work well with each other, and then there are guns involved. So people also die, in more ways than one. When I saw that video, that's one of the things that really in my mind was like blown by the fact that nobody sees this and nobody is thinking about how we solve this. But of course, nobody's thinking about how we solve this because we've got Big Icele sleeping at the wheel.
Anything to add to that, Dumo?
Yeah, that's actually a sad story. First time hearing that, Pumi. I just think for me, this is a situation where I think government is doing too much. So now you've got JMPD here, you've got SAPS there. You know, there's so many. There's just, you don't know who's who really. So I just think, in my opinion, they probably just need to simplify the system, and that's not through centralization. I think perhaps they just need to give more freedoms to the provinces rather, and then maybe the SAPS can take a back foot. But I just think, in my opinion, if you're having situations where two government institutions are fighting against each other who are supposed to protect the public, then I think there's a serious problem going on.
Well, our friend Leon Doba says, I am team SAPS. That man could shoot 6 shots clean to the chest. So Leto is jumping in on the side of the SAPS. All right, ladies and gents, I'm afraid that is all the time we have for this week's Burning Platform. Dumo, it's always good to see you. Thank you very much for your time. We'll catch up with you soon. Dumo Denga can be found through his social media handles, which I will put up on screen now. And you can also find his own podcast, which is terrific, the Man Patriot podcast. You can also check him out on all the socials and on the YouTubes and everything else too. Nice to see you. Thank you very much. Cheers, Dumo. And Pums, you have a lovely week. What's left of it and weekend. I can't believe it's already Thursday morning. It feels like this week has just flown by. And keep warm. Keep warm.
Oh.
Any exciting plans to keep warm for the weekend? What do you do, Pums? What do you do?
Oh, stay home and make a fire. That's what I'm going to do. But you know what exciting thing I am doing this afternoon? Going to a policy discussion about the changes to the IEC Act.
Ooh,
And yeah. So I'll tell you all about that next week.
All right, maybe talk to one of those IEC people so we can get them on the show as well. Because I think that's very important. No point in us talking about voting and getting people to register if the electoral process itself comes into question, right?
Yeah, and there's, as you know, there are many changes afoot there. It's part of the reason why it still hasn't been announced when we're going to be voting, when exactly voting is going to happen. But I'm expecting a lively and interesting discussion. I'll tell you all about it next week.
Thanks, Pumi. Very good.
If it doesn't keep me warm, I know it's going to get me hot under the collar.